Hello and welcome to episode 68 of the Victorian Studio podcast. My name is Maureen and I'm coming to you as always from my studio here in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. Welcome to all new and returning viewers. Thank you so much for spending a little bit of your day with me here in my studio where I can show you what I've been up to over the last few weeks. And that this time is going to be knitting. I really didn't have too much time to do anything but knitting, so that's what 99% of the episode is going to be about today. Well, I wanted to thank, first of all, Christina, that's Mama C, on Ravelry. She contacted me and has generously donated a Ravelry pattern to give away to one lucky viewer of the podcast. So I thought since the next episode is going to be about August the 1st, I'll be doing drawings for the Harry Potter knit-along at that time, and I'm going to add that prize in with all of those other drawings that I'm going to do on the next episode. So Christina, thank you so very much for your kind and generous donation to the podcast. Also, thank you so much to my friends over at the Pen, Hook and Needles podcast, Marlisha and Talia. They've always been so very kind and supportive of my podcast and my shop, and they always mention it, and I do really appreciate it. Thank you so much, dear friends, for that. Well, over the last little while, we've been busy with a few family things, and that's why I didn't record yesterday. But speaking of family, we also have a family of robins in our backyard. And it's been really interesting to watch them over the last few weeks. It seems like it's pretty late. I would have expected a family of robins to appear earlier in the spring, but about a month or so ago, we noticed that a male and a female robin were swooping up underneath the eave at the back of our house. Our bedroom windows face our backyard. And so not only do we, but the cats, of course, have been watching these two birds swoop right under near the window and under the eave where we have some greenery growing up the side of the house. So it's a fairly well concealed area. And when we were watching them fly under there, we could see that they had in their beaks nesting material. So we knew that they were building a nest. And a few years ago, we did have a nest underneath there. So we knew that these two were busy building a new nest. And just a few days ago, I had the bedroom window open and we could hear this little high-pitched cheep, cheep, cheep. And so the babies obviously have hatched. We stay away from them. I don't want to get any pictures of the babies or anything. I don't want to upset the parents, but you can see how very protective they are. They've actually made the nest right over the door from our garage out to the backyard. And so when hubby went out there one day to mow the backyard, he was out there for a little while, and these parent robins, this was before the babies had hatched, were very anxious about him being anywhere near, and they were kind of swooping down on him. And when I got home a little bit later, he was telling me that not only were they swooping him, but the male had dive bombed him and hit him on the head with a pine cone. This male robin had picked up a pine cone in our backyard. We have lots of pine trees in the backyard. I guess had picked up this pine cone and literally dropped it on my husband's head while he was mowing the lawn in the backyard. So ever since then, we've kept our distance and respected their privacy. But I thought that was just hilarious. So I think at the end of the episode, I'll have a picture of the female, which is a very lighter red-breasted robin, and the male, even though he was a little bit smaller than the female, he has a brighter red breast. So it's been very interesting to see. And over the last few days, we can see that they've been bringing big fat worms in their beaks as well up to the nest. So that's been a lot of fun to watch this little family from afar growing and thriving underneath our eave at our backyard. So that's been a lot of fun. Well, like I said, I've basically been very concentrated on doing knitting over the last little while. So why don't I just get right to it and show you what I've been up to. The first project that I wanted to share with you today is a very small project I did for the Harry Potter Knit and Crochet House Cup. I know I've talked about it a lot, but it is really great to get the juices flowing and ideas going about doing some not so common projects. And this little toy that I made is something that I've been wanting to do for a while. I've had it in my Ravelry library for quite a while. It's a free pattern and I just never got around to making it, so it was fun to do because you have to kind of follow certain prompts in submitting things to classes or extracurricular activities over in that group. It was a lot of fun to actually have the opportunity to make a little bunny. So that's the first thing I wanted to share. What I did was I printed off this pattern, and it's a free pattern on Ravelry called Henry's Bunny. And let's see, the designer here is Sarah Elizabeth Kellner. And I used some Kramer yarn that was so generously donated to the podcast last fall by the Kramer yarns, this Naturally Nazareth worsted weight yarn that I had left over from doing the Toy Cal last fall. So this is colorway called a Moonlight, and usually it calls for US size 8 needles, but I wanted to make this at a tighter gauge, so I ended up using 3.25 millimeter needles for this. And I made a few little changes to the pattern, but there's basically the little bunny there. And it was a lot of fun to do and real quick too. Because the bunny was for Harry Potter, I wanted to do something a little bit different to it, and I made a little bow in the Gryffindor colors. I had some left over of this Lang Jawal in both the red, I think it was ruby colorway. I only had a few meters left of it, so I literally used the whole thing, plus this egg yolk colorway, and all I did was just braid it using the entire remaining red colorway, and just wrapped it around his neck and made a little bow. And I also did a little pom-pom for his tail, and that was a lot of fun too. I just did what I've read on YouTube, calling it a lazy pom-pom method. It was just basically wrapping it around my fingers and then tying it and cutting it down to create the nice pom-pom shape. And at first I wasn't really happy with the shape of the pom-pom. You could still see the dividing piece of yarn in between when I was cutting it down. So what I ended up doing, and I thought it might be helpful for anybody that's doing pom-poms on something that maybe isn't worn or given to children as toys. If you're just doing it like I am, just for a display, just for something fun, what really worked really well to make the pom-pom keep its shape was spritzing it with a little bit of hairspray, and that really seemed to work very well. So I was really pleased with that. So that's my little Henry's Bunny, and of course I entered it into the Pinhook and Needles and the Crocheting Whovian's web or podcast groups on Ravelry for their tortoise versus hare knit along. So I'm on Team Bunny. So there's my little bunny for my entry over there. So yeah, that was a lot of fun just to do a real quick project. And I think yeah, I did that for Quidditch over on the House Cup. Can't remember what the project was, what the prompt was for that, but yeah, it was a lot of fun to finally do a design or a pattern out of my library that's been in there for quite a while. So the second project that I wanted to share with you was also for Quidditch, and that's one that I'm currently working on. It's for Quidditch Match 5, which I believe is the last match for this term. The current term, called the spring term, ends at the end of this month. So just yesterday was the starting, no, today was the starting day for the final match for Quidditch. And this time we were prompted to do something using all 4 founders' colorways or house colors at Hogwarts, or at least to have something representative of all 4 houses in Hogwarts. And because I had some leftover yarn from doing my 4 founders socks in the London House yarns of the same name, it was wonderful to be able to just pull that yarn out, the leftovers, I have plenty left, and to come up with some kind of project that would meet those requirements for Quidditch. So I just started on this morning, and when I was doing my socks, I had already split the yarn into 2 balls. So there's the London House yarns, one of the skeins that I had left, and this is the second one. I balled it up again to start work on this project. So that's the London House yarns. And as I said, it's the 4 founders colorway. It's 75% superwash merino and 25% nylon. So I am using, let's see, I believe I'm also using the 1.5 US size needles for this, because I wanted to make it so that it was a tight gauge. What I decided to do was to make a men's tie, but it's not for a man, it's going to be for myself. And I had to share with you many years ago, I don't wear them as often, but many years ago during the 80s, 90s, I was very well known at work at the hospital for my ties. I would often wear a men's tie, loose around the neck, not uptight, but they would always be very nerdy, geeky ties, like my Star Wars ties and cartoon ties and things like that, Snoopy, Bugs Bunny, those kind of things. So I became very well known for wearing ties. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to make myself a Hogwarts related tie. So here's the 4 founders colorway when it's knit up just in a very thin tube. So this will be the back of the tie. And when looking on Ravelry, I noticed that other men's ties, they made them about this width. Some of them are just a single side rather than being in a tube, but I wanted the stockinette to show on both sides, and I wanted a nice clean edge on it as well. So hopefully this will work out. I'm just doing it straight stockinette, I'm not doing any design in it. And the other patterns, they kept knitting till it was about 5.5 feet long. So what I'll do is I'll just try it on as I go, and then near the end I'll widen it a little bit, and then at the end bring it down to a point. So I'm hoping that this is going to work out. So far I have Ravenclaw on the bottom, Gryffindor House says second, and now I'm working on Slytherin, and after that will be Hufflepuff. So those will keep repeating until the end. So I have plenty of yarn, I'm not worried about that. It'll be interesting to see how much it uses, but we have 9 days to finish up our final Quidditch projects. So I think this will be a lot of fun. And what I also found to put on the tie when it's done is something I picked up on the weekend, and that's a Hogwarts pin. So I thought that would kind of look neat as a tie pin when I'm finished. So I'm going to add that to the tie when it's done. So yeah, so that's my current Quidditch project, and I just got that done at lunchtime today. So I think that'll go pretty quickly. So I always like doing something different. I'm not one to do all the standard designs. If you've been here before, you know that I like the more unusual projects. So yeah, it's a lot of fun to be part of that group and have the opportunity to make something different. Speaking of which, I also just handed in today a project that I've been working on over the last few days. It again is for the house cup, and the prompt this time for the charms class was to do either something in green or a frog, a 3-dimensional frog, or a representation of a frog. And so I had an idea right away, and I was really hoping that nobody else would come up with this idea before I handed it in today. And sure enough, that nobody else has, although we have till the end of the month to hand in projects. So it doesn't mean that somebody's never done it before or will do it. But it was a lot of fun to get it in, because I had already a lot of nice feedback on it. What I did was I decided that I was going to do a frog, but because it's Harry Potter, I wanted to do a chocolate frog. So I went on to Ravelry and looked up a few three-dimensional frog patterns, toys, that kind of thing. And after looking at a few, it came to me that the chocolate frog in Harry Potter is actually more like a tree frog, not just a standard frog, but one with very long toes and fingers. So I found a tree frog pattern. Now, this is a paid-for pattern that I found. That project, I believe, is in here. And I printed that one off, and it's a very complex pattern though. Looking at the other projects, they have rave reviews for the patterns, very detailed, but was much more detailed than I needed. So what I did was I deviated quite a bit from this pattern. So this is called Tree Frog, and it is by Hansi Singh. And as I said, it's a paid-for pattern. I used US 1.5 needles, and I ended up using 18 grams of yarn for this. Now, as I said, I deviated a fair amount from this pattern. And if you wanted to see all the details of how I made this, you can just go to my Ravelry page, and it will be on the projects there. So the first thing I wanted to do was to get some dark brown yarn to make this, and at first I was looking at the wool at Michael's, and they really didn't have very much in a dark brown. They had lighter browns, but the only thing that I could really find was this. I think it's, let's see if it's all wool. It doesn't say. I think this is just acrylic. Let's see. Oh, 85% acrylic, 15% nylon. Yeah, so it's all acrylic nylon. But it's from Loops and Threads, and it's called Woolike. And what I really liked about this is two things. It's very, very soft, very nice. It's a small, like a thinner yarn, so I didn't want to make a big, huge frog. So that was good. And also the colorway is chocolate, so that was perfect. So this, yeah, is so very soft, very, very nice. And so I knew I had lots. In this skein is 678 yards, so it's a huge amount. It's 3.5 ounces, or like 100 grams. So it's a lot of yarn. So the other thing that I wanted to do while I was making it, I know from doing toys in the past, when you stuff them, the stuffing will show through if you don't have a very, very tight gauge. But doing something that's dark, even with a tight gauge, I knew that if I stuffed it with my regular stuffing that I usually use for my toys, that would probably show through. So I made the decision that not only was I going to use this yarn for knitting this item, it was going to be used for stuffing it as well. And at the end of the podcast, I'll have in my slideshow pictures of the progression as I was knitting it and then stuffing it as I was sewing it up. One of the things that really was, I'm not saying difficult, but tedious about this this design is there's a whole lot of Kitchener-ing. So if you don't like to Kitchener, I wouldn't recommend this pattern to you. But if it's something that you don't mind doing, there is a lot of Kitchener stitch in this, even more than what I did. So I guess I'll just show you what I ended up making, and then I'll explain to you some of the differences. So here's my chocolate frog. It's kind of hard to see, but there he is. And again, I'll have pictures that will show you better when I'm finished. You start out by doing the legs, and because they're done sideways is why you have to then pick up stitches on your cast on row and Kitchener them all up. So all 4 legs you do that way. As well, in the pattern, it had these toes being done with a fairly complex list of instructions. And I said, oh, what the heck, I'm just going to make these as a 4-stitch I-cord and then sew them on. So that worked just great, and it was so much quicker than going through all the detailed instructions that they had on the pattern. So I did that for all the toes and fingers of my chocolate frog. As well, they do the eyes quite complex, but a tree frog's eyes, well, at least in this pattern, were really, really bulbous, really big. But on a chocolate frog, they're not as big. So I just did smaller eyes on my little guy. And also in the pattern, it has a really detailed underbelly. It says to pick up all the stitches around it. And I tell you, when I was working on this, I was having deja vu to high school biology class and dissecting frogs, because as you'll see at the with the pictures at the end, it looked like it was this poor thing was being dissected instead of being put together. All I did was I just shaped a bit of yarn in a garter stitch and then just sewed it on and then stuffed it again with the same yarn. So he's all stuffed with the yarn, worked out really well. As you do the legs, you stuff it, and then Kitchener as you go and stuff it a little bit, Kitchener more, stuff it, Kitchener a little more. So yeah, it took a little while to do this little guy. It took a couple of days, but I'm happy with the results. I'm glad that everybody's getting a kick out of my my chocolate frog for charms class. So yeah, as I mentioned, the pattern is a paid-for pattern. If you are interested in doing, you know, a more realistic looking tree frog, I would highly recommend it, but just be aware it's a very complex, and I would say a fairly moderately difficult pattern. A lot of short rows, a lot of picking up stitches, and a lot of Kitchener. But I'm glad I found it because it made a more true to the story chocolate frog than just a regular frog design. So let's see, the other things that I was working on, a couple more things that I wanted to share with you, because my last project that I'm going to share with you took the majority of my time this week. I really didn't get a lot done on my Polyjuice potion socks, but I did get a little bit done. I think the last time I showed you I was just going down the leg of these, and I call them my Polyjuice potion socks because that's the yarn name from No Makers, Polyjuice potion colorway. And this is in their let's see, one fine gnome color base. That's 60% superwash merino, 20% superfine alpaca, and 20% nylon. So I thought this was really neat colorway that would make some really really bright socks. So the turquoises and purples are really nice. But because it's quite a variegated yarn, I decided just to do plain vanilla socks with, again, the German short row heel, which is so quick to do. I don't know if I'll ever go back to making a heel gusset sock again, because these fit me so well. And I did both of these short row heels in just, you know, a couple of hours. So I really enjoy it. So because I've got both the heels now on my socks, I'm down to doing the foot and the toe. So I'm sure by the next episode I will have these done. So as usual, I do a top down, start at the cuff and work my way down 2x2 rib, just plain stockinette. And I'll do all of that right to the end, and then Kitchener. Oh no, more Kitchenering. At least it's not as many stitches as that darn frog. Kitchener up the toes. So, yeah, at least I got a little bit done on those. And now that I'm finished my last project, I'm going to have more time to work on some other projects. Yeah, that's right. I was able to finish my cardigan. It seemed like over the last week at least, I got to a point where I just wanted to get it done. I just worked on it as much as I possibly could, and I actually finished it last Thursday. and I had to block it, so it took a couple of days because it's been fairly muggy here. So it took a couple of days for it to actually dry so that I could take the final pictures of it and submit it for my owl over at the Harry Potter House Cup. And an owl is a project that you choose to do over a 3-month period. So it's something that should be challenging, something that will take you 2 to 3 months to complete. So I was very pleased that I was able to get it done 2 weeks early. I wasn't, desperately trying to finish up at the last minute, which I was having visions that I would be doing. So, as I mentioned, I got to a point where I just wanted to get it done. So, I'm really thrilled to have my Thyony cardigan completed. So, I will show you first of all, before I show you the actual cardigan, the yarn that I chose for this. And I started this at the beginning of May. And I had 4 skeins of this Malabrigo, and it's the Mashita in the Serenus colorway. And this is what I have left, almost a complete skein left. I think it's about, it's 71 grams left of that. And the contrast color I used for this is the Madeline Tosh Merino Light in the Fallen Cloud colorway. And I have 49 grams of that left. So, I could probably still put those together. Maybe I'll make some matching mitts or something to go with my cardigan. That would be kind of cool. This worked out really well. I'm really pleased. If you've been here before, the only thing I really deviated from the pattern is that I decided to make the stripes in the yoke and the bottom of the cardigan as a straight stockinette stitch rather than drop stitch as they show. So this is the Thyony by Tori Gerbitz. And I really love the pattern. I would highly recommend. It's a paid-for pattern on Ravelry, but it's really neat. It starts at the shoulders, you work your way down, and it's really cool construction. So I was really pleased that I was able to do it without any major headaches. So let's see. I will put pictures again at the end so you can see it a little bit better, because it probably will be a little bit difficult to see. But there is the top with the shoulders striping, the sleeves, a little bit of striping on the cuff, and on the bottom hem, again, some striping as well. And I chose some buttons that I had in my stash that were kind of this metallic silver with a little bit of like a coppery green in it as well. So I have 8 of those buttons on here. So this is so nice because it's really light cardigan. I've never made a piece of wardrobe that will be nice to wear even in the summertime on cool mornings. And I tell you, I could have had it today. At our work, it varies from being very hot to being very cold, it seems. A few weeks ago, the air conditioning broke at my work, and so it was just sweltering there. They were even telling people to go outside to cool off, and even though it was a very hot day, it was even hotter inside. Luckily, we're not on a ward where patients are. It's mostly administration where I am. It's a couple floors above the emergency room, who was taking care of somebody that I'm sure almost everybody will know. We took care of former President Jimmy Carter last week, and unfortunately he took ill at the Habitat for Humanity work site, but he stayed overnight at our hospital and then was back out on the work site again the next day, looking much better. So he was just dehydrated, but it was very exciting to see all the black cars and all the Secret Service and everybody all around rated our work there. So I'm glad everything turned out well for him, but that was a very exciting day for our workplace, that's for sure. So I could have really used this cardigan though today. Now that the air conditioning has been fixed, it was freezing today. It was so cold. I was keeping my hands warm on my coffee. So now that it's done and I've shown it on the podcast, yay, I can wear it. So definitely this will be a sweater that I bring to work. It'll be good for those very cool air-conditioned days. And then come fall, I'm sure I'm going to get lots of wear out of this all the time. I think this is going to be my new favorite piece of wardrobe. So it's so nice to have that finished. I'm really pleased that it turned out so well. And I submitted it and was awarded in total 200 points for Gryffindor. So that was a lot of fun too. So my very first owl over at the Harry Potter House Cup. So that's my knitting. The other things that I usually show, some of my sculpting and that. I didn't get any of that done because I really wanted to get my owl completed. But thank you to everybody who has purchased from my shop. I am thinking of also opening a shop on Etsy. My current shop is on Storenvy. And even though Etsy does charge a fee, what I think I'm going to do is just put a couple of items in there. Then I'm going to watch and see if I get more sales over there rather than at Storenvy. I might just keep both of them open and split my inventory over the both. So I'm going to see. So I may do that. And if I do, I will announce that on Instagram. But thank you to everybody also who has contacted me with some suggestions and desires to have certain stitch markers created. So I'm hoping to work on that now that I'm getting podcasting out of the way. I'll be able to work on that over the next couple of weeks for the next episode. Hopefully have some more to show you on that front. The only other things that I was working on was I did a little bit of sewing, doing something for a friend that I sent away in the mail today. So while I had the sewing machine out, I made myself another Harry Potter bag because I was running out of bags with so many projects on the go at once. I had some Hogwarts house material that I had purchased from Spoonflower. And when I went back to Spoonflower just recently, I noticed that you can't get this material anymore. And you can't get almost all of these materials that I've made bags out of before, like the Hogwarts Express. I mean, they may come back, but it seems like every so often Spoonflower goes through all of the items, and if they feel that there's been a copyright violation, they'll take those fabrics down because they're submitted by users. And so I couldn't find any more of any of these Harry Potter patterns that I have right now. There are a few, but they're not as nice as the ones that I found previously. So I'm very lucky that I was able to get these material or these fabric designs while I could. So I made myself another little bag and a little notions pouch to go in that, and both of them are lined with just this nice striping pattern material. And I even made myself another DPN holder. So yeah, nice little project that I was doing on the weekend when I had my sewing machine out. It was nice to have that out again. It's been a while since I've done any sewing. So let's see, I'm just checking my notes, making sure I haven't forgotten anything. I think that's it. It's a little bit shorter this week. I hope you'll stick around to check out some of the images that I have of what we've been up to over the last couple of weeks. And I hope you'll join me again in 2 weeks' time. Can't believe that's already going to be August the 1st. And I'll do some drawing again for the prizes for the Harry Potter knit along. So if you've got projects that you want to get in before the end of the month, please do, so that you'll be eligible for some more prizes there. So thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I hope you enjoyed seeing what I had to share, and I hope that you'll come back and join me again in my studio on about August the 1st. So until then, take care everyone. Bye-bye.